Hello, Uncle Roddus back again with a video, and it's a roundup time. It's a roundup for New Zealand Music Month. It is the last day of May, and the New Zealand Music Month is coming to a close. And it's been a rather full-on one, certainly for the vinyl purchasers. So I have made two videos covering some of the earlier stuff that I picked up this month. There was the unboxing, there was 9 records there, and there was a couple of records that I showed in the video previous to that had the first couple of arrivals of New Zealand Music Month of the stuff that I had purchased at the start of the month. So I started off the month with the intention of buying 1 record per day. I went over that actually, so there's a little bit more than the I showed. Did I show 3 records? 3 records on the first video, and then I had 9, so that's 12. And then the rest of the month, my brain's not working. It's Friday night, and I can't do my maths in my head right now. Anyway, I've got quite a few records here. This is going to be a bit more longer video than usual. So what I was doing was picking up stuff that was some of the Bandcamp new releases and Bandcamp stuff that I had on my want list, and some new records that had come out. And then there was some stuff at Flying Out that I had on my want list that I picked up. And then I got on Discogs, and I went a bit crazy on Discogs. And unfortunately, yeah, I did go a wee bit over my budgets because I picked up some pretty old and rather more expensive records off Discogs, but filled in a few holes in my old New Zealand music, or older New Zealand music. So there's a real selection of stuff. One that I picked up, which is playing in the background, later in the month, and this is what's playing behind me here, is this record here by Douglas Lilburn, and I was really excited to get the hold of this. This is one of the Kiwi Pacific New Zealand Composers Edition records from 1980. And as you can hear, this is electronic music. Douglas Lilburn is, as I have said on many occasions, our most famous New Zealand composer in classical type music, and he was composing from the 1940s, I guess up until he died. I can't quite tell you when he passed, but I think it may have been in the late 80s or something like that. As you can hear, blip, bloop, bleep, bloop, in the background, this is what he was doing, and this is really good. I really like this, and I've shown Douglas before in some compilations that I picked up of his music on like the 3 LP box set that they put out of New Zealand electronic compilation from 1975, which is really, really cool. Right, let's start off. The first day of the month I ordered this out of Australia, but this is an ex-Kiwi living there by the name of Sarah Mary Chadwick, and I have mentioned her on numerous occasions because I have all of her output on LP. I don't know if she's ever put out any singles or anything like that. This is probably her 5th album, I do believe. Former leader of Bat Rider. Bat Rider are a really fantastically cool grungy sort of band from the early 2000s. I don't have any of their music. There is a compilation of theirs on vinyl, very hard to find. There is a CD which I may pick up one day, and they didn't put out a lot of stuff, but they were really cool. This is a lot different. This one here she did on an organ at the Melbourne Town Hall Grand Organ, and I'll tell you what, I am going to find my reading glasses. Be back in 2 ticks. There they are. Enjoy the music. And I was still wearing my work glasses, I see. Right, so Sarah Mary Chadwick was the first one I picked up, although it did take quite a while to get here. That was off her Bandcamp site, and then also off Bandcamp, this one here from 2014. It's an EP of sorts, but it's actually quite long. There's almost 15 minutes of music on each side. This is a band called Mice on Stilts, and Ocean Held Me from 2014. This is fantastic. This is a really, really, really quality piece of vinyl. The lead singer, he reminds me of a band quite well known, the singer quite well known, whose name I just can't. There's a touch of Jim Morrison in there, but there's also someone else, and the name came to me the other day while I was listening to it, but you think I can remember it now. What's this on? All Good Absolute Alternative Records. Yeah, really cool. That is off of Bandcamp. It is still available if people are keen to pick it up. I picked up this finally. This has been on my Flying Out Want list for quite some while. This is a Flying Nun reissue of an original Flying Nun, I believe, from 1994. This is the reissue from 2015. This is David Kilgore's Sugar Mouth. I do believe this may be David's first solo LP. He was one of the Kilgore brothers out of the Clean, a famous New Zealand Flying Nun, and one of the original Flying Nun actually bands, who released the second ever Flying Nun solo single back in 1981 about. Okay, some New Zealand hardcore metal of sorts. Bullet Belt. This is their third LP, perhaps. I do have two others of theirs. What's this called? 9 Centuries. Interestingly, if you look at the cover there and see there's a topless lady, holding a noose. Well, this was in the bag with it. I had a laugh when I pulled that out. That is cool. Hang on, I'll just put that back in there. And there is some peripheral pieces that came with it. Well, first of all, it's an intense heavy metal album on yellow vinyl. Can you believe? Yeah, maybe not the most heavy metal colour, yellow vinyl. I think this is kind of self-release. It's got their stuff on the label, and then there's a little note saying thank you, Rodney, for buying our record, blah blah blah. And then there was a couple of little posters, a gig poster, and a what's this one? An album poster. So pretty cool. I've only actually got to listen to it once. It's got pretty... Oh, there's some more stuff in here. Oh, is that a lyric sheet? Yeah, lyric sheet. Picture of the band. Pretty shouty, sort of grovelly vocals from a female. But yeah, it's some good guitar breaks in there. Although I thought that the guitar was mixed. They didn't sort of... The guitar solos didn't kind of stand out like they kind of were sort of just in the mix, although you could hear them fairly clearly. It's not a bad recording. Anyway, glad to have that. So that was a brand new release that only just kind of hit the airwaves just at the start of or at the end of last month or something like that. So seeing as I was buying so much New Zealand music, I also off Bandcamp, I went back and picked up a few more of Craig Williamson's Lamp of the Universe LPs that I didn't already have. He's got quite a lot of records out actually. Some of them, this is a reissue of an original, the Cosmic Union, Lamp of the Universe. It is a double LP, and the reissue is from 2018, so only just last year he reissued this, but the original album was from 2000, I think. Yeah, sort of spiritual psych kind of sort of stuff. Yeah, pretty interesting music. And like I say, he is pretty prolific. I picked up this one, Lamp of the Universe, Acid Mantra. Oh, number 369 of 500, strictly limited. I don't know. This is obviously the original one. I can't remember. I can't tell you what year. This one's on Clostridium Records, which he's done a few of. I better have a quick look. This is one of those horrible, sticky, flat covers, which I don't really like. There's a chronic cover shortage from our local record shop in Christchurch due to the fact that the company that they were buying their records from, their record covers, you know, the out of plastic sleeves, their machine cracked out, so they bought a new machine, and the new machine has actually made a complete disaster of actually making the sleeves, and they were falling to bits. So there's some insert there. I'm not sure what that is about. It's just the lyrics, and it's just on black vinyl, this one. So I'm always pleased to support Craig and his music. I met Craig. I met him at a gig he did here last year with his band Arc of Ascent, who are a little bit more heavier, and I'll be getting to them in a second. But yeah, he's a nice guy. I had a nice chat to him because we're on Facebook and that, so that was really cool to meet him and hear him play live. It was really, he did really well. I was really impressed. And there's still a few more. I really do hate these covers. They are awful, and they're very thin. Anyway, so yeah, there are still a few more of his to get, but I did pick up the latest one. I believe this is the latest one that came out. Well, then saying that, let's say it was recorded in 2017. Yeah, it came out last year. This was on Broken Silence Records. What's it called? A Line in the Fourth Dimension. I haven't actually had a chance to play these very much because I have had so much music coming in. And finally, from Craig, his Arc of Ascent. This is the latest Arc of Ascent record. There are 2 tracks on side 1, 12 and 11 minutes each, and then he has shared this album with a band called Zone 6, and they have 1 track that takes up 21 minutes on the other side. I actually haven't listened to this yet, although I did hear a track off this on one of Chris's podcasts. Sounded pretty damn cool. Okay, so another Bandcamp purchase direct from the band. Zell Records is a company out of Austria, and Arno, who runs it, has strong connections to New Zealand. I'm not quite sure how, but he does know a few people that I know in the music scene here that I sort of got to know over the last couple of years. And he is releasing New Zealand stuff. Unfortunately, distribution is not very good in New Zealand. And anyway, so I got this directly from the band guys in New Zealand. Fortunately, they had copies to sell because to get them sent from Zell Records in Austria is an arm and a leg in postage. This is droney, lo-fi pop music. Well, not pop music really, is it? It's pretty heavy. It's pretty droney. It's pretty lo-fi. It's pretty good. Some nice vocal melodies on it. Actually, the singer Robin Sharma, whose brother Aaron Sharma put out a record on Coco Muse last year, which I picked up. It's pretty cool. Now, this is a little bit of a New Zealand grail, and I paid 3 figures for this. So this is where I'm getting into some of the more expensive records that I purchased as the month went on. I kind of got a bit carried away. Songs for the Dead of Gandamak. Phil Davidson. This is a self-released album, I believe, or it says by Bent Records, and this is the only release on Bent Records. From 1979. This is avant-garde, free jazz sort of thing. There are some cover songs, like there is a John Coltrane track and a Coots Gillespie thing, but there are some original stuff on here. There's a song called Pounding the Rice I Go to Sleep, which is a piano solo, and that is utterly fantastic. And then he also did the piece afterwards is a traditional arrangement on saxophone that he did of a piece called Thee, O Christ, the Prince of Ages, and that is really, really good. But overall, it's a very, very good and exciting album, and I am really pleased to have it, and it is rather rare, and it is one of the very few true free jazz type records in New Zealand that have been put out, because the jazz scene here, although is good, it doesn't have a lot of really sort of avant free music going. Bought that off Discogs, and also from the same seller up in the North Island, which I believe is another record shop up there. I picked up this, the Wild Poppies Heroine from 1987. This is an indie sort of poppy kind of sort of Flying Nun band, but not the same as the Dunedin sort of sound. Yeah, it's a couple of good listens. It sounds pretty cool. It's not, I wouldn't rave about it, but I think it will grow on me. It is quite rare, pretty hard, don't see it around, and paid more than I'd like to. Right, okay, now we get to some really exciting stuff that I picked up, because I've been wanting to get my hands on these for ages, and I picked them up from 3 different Discog sellers out of, would you believe, 2 of them came from the States, I think, and 1 came from England. Right, so Expressway Records. Expressway Records was the brainchild of Bruce Russell from the Dead Sea. And Bruce started Expressway because he became a bit disillusioned with Flying Nun, and I believe that's what he said, and those were his words on a documentary I have watched. Because the sort of music that he was getting into, and the people he were playing with was a little bit too underground and lo-fi and weirder than what was happening on Flying Nun. And Flying Nun were putting out some pretty cool stuff, but yeah, it didn't have anywhere near the commercial possibilities that Flying Nun did. And even that Flying Nun, I mean, you wouldn't call them grossly commercial, but anyway. So he put out this, he started this record label, and over the life of the record label, mostly they put out cassettes, but they did some compilations, and I'm calling this the Expressway Trifecta. So there are 3 compilations that are put out on 12-inch vinyl. There are some on 7-inch vinyl, some half a dozen tracks, or one with a whole bunch of tracks at a minute each. There are some on cassette that were never put on vinyl or any other format, but I am only focusing on the vinyl ones, and especially the 12-inch ones, because I don't really like 7-inch. So this is the first, I believe this is the first one they released, the Expressway New Zealand Singles Collection 1988 to 1991. This is probably their most accessible set of songs. We have everything from the Dead Sea, Alistair Galbraith, to Peter Jeffries and Robbie Muir, the Terminals, and David Mitchell and Denise Rohan, and Plague or Grind. Yeah, really pleased to have that one. Now, so I could be wrong, that might not be the very first compilation they put out, because actually I just realised that the next one I'm going to show you, which is this one here, is the Expressway Pile-Up. And actually this was in, well, it was put out on, this version was put out in 1990 on Avalanche Records. Yeah, Avalanche. So Making Losers Happy was put out on Drag City. This is put out on Avalanche in 1990. This was originally a cassette release, of course, directly from Expressway, and it had 15 tracks. This has been whittled down to 10 tracks, but I understand there may be a slightly different lineup of songs. It's not like just taking 10 straight off the cassette. I think there's some different stuff. If I had a cassette player, I would probably buy the cassettes, but I don't, and I don't like cassettes. So we got Plague or Grind again on here. We got the 3Ds. We've got the Dead Sea again. We got Snapper, and Shane Carter and Peter Jeffries singing Randolph's Going Home, which is a really classic New Zealand Flying Nun type song, actually. Yeah, so actually this would be their first compilation, and this is probably the most accessible one, actually. And finally, the best of the lot for me is this one here. This is probably the most inaccessible one musically, but it's fantastic. An Expressway compilation, which was released on Turbulence Records in 1991. Turbulence was a Belgian label that specialised pretty much in Dunedin music on vinyl, because a lot of it wasn't getting released in New Zealand on vinyl because no one was buying it. It was just so underground and raw and lo-fi, but it's fantastic music. Again, we have the likes of a band called Trash, who I have showed their record that they put out on Turbulence. Actually, they had a couple of records, I believe. We have Alistair Galbraith again. We have a lady called Kathy Bull, who I think I've showed some records for. We have A Handful of Dust on this, which I showed their record, their new compilation that came out recently. Bit of This Kind of Punishment. No, sorry, not Kathy Bull. It's Sandra Bell, who I've shown before. She's on here. Got a couple of really good tracks. Yeah, really. So three LPs, but they're actually EPs. They're actually 45 RPM with 3 songs on each side. So there's 3 of them. Fantastic. Killing Capitalism with Kindness. These are for me a bit of grails of the New Zealand compilation scene. Another compilation, because you know I like compilations. This one here, I'd seen this in the shop several times. Oh yeah, so what happened was I got to go into town unscheduled, I believe, from whatever reason it was, and I got to go to Penny Lane. Oh, actually, I went to Penny Lane because I wanted some bloody record covers, and I got told, no, come back in a couple of weeks, we may have some. I've been asking them since Record Store Day, and as I said, their manufacturer is not coming to the party, and they're really struggling. They did buy some from another record shop in the North Island, and he said they were total shit. Anyway, New Zealand Story and Song. So yeah, I got this from Penny Lane with the next few records I'm going to show you. This is a compilation of basically folk music, really. I haven't listened to the whole thing yet, but the biggest reason I brought it is there are 2 songs on it by a band called, how do you say it, Tamburlaine. And Tamburlaine put out 2 albums in the 1970s of sort of psych folk, and they sound really, really good. And I'll just pop that off the record, and we should play it again, Sam. More bloop, 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 bleep, bleep, bleep. And anyway, so their songs on there, this is really cool, but this is very, very folky, very Irish sounding folky. So it's New Zealand, songs about New Zealand. I can't say too much. I haven't really had a decent listen to it. I've played one side a couple of times, but I just haven't had a chance. But this is another Kiwi Pacific. So I picked this up for reasonably cheap, actually, and it's in good nick. But there is a copy on Discogs for like twice what I paid for it. And then another compilation that I found down there at Penny Lane. I didn't know what it was at first, but I knew some of the bands on it. And then when I got home, I found out that it was actually on my Discogs want list. But we'll do our best on, well, actually it's Propeller Records, so that's another thing that attracted me to it. And a few names were the Diehards and the Wastrels and Eight Living Legs and the Terrors of Tiny Town. They were familiar. Diatribe, they were all familiar names to me. Maybe not so much the songs. I mean, the Terror of Tiny Town, they only put out a couple of songs, and this isn't the one I was familiar with, but yeah, so very 80s actually. This is from 1983. It's very 80s sounding. Some interesting stuff. Yeah, pleased to get it. And it was on my want list, so it's nice to cross another want lister off my Discogs want list. And I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it. I was reasonably excited to find this, and it is an EP. This is a Flying Nun EP, and it is I believe the first EP from JPS, the Jean-Paul Sartre Experience, who shortened their name to JPS Experience after they got some stick from Jean-Paul Sartre's estate, I believe. This has their song Flex, which is probably their best known song and their best song. So really pleased to do it. This is a little bit pricey. For a 5-song EP, but I am really pleased to pick up their stuff. There was a reissue box set that came out a couple of years back, which you can pick up for around $100, which has their EPs and their albums on it, but I never got around to buying it. But I've actually been lucky enough to find 2 of their records already in the last 6 months. So this was their first LP. Because I picked up their second one, I think, in Dunedin, which I showed a few months back. This is Flying Nun 80, made in New Zealand. Yeah, love songs. Yeah, from 1986, I believe. And it's got their song I Like Rain, which is the one I was familiar with, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's cool. I've only listened to it once so far, and on first impressions, I actually like their second album better. Okay, so when I was ordering some of the stuff from Discogs, if the seller has more than one record I want and I can afford to go there, I'll get a couple of 3, depending on what the stage is before the next increase in mail costs. And so I was able to get 2 albums from one Discog seller from the States for the same price, and he happened to have a copy of this. And I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it. This is a band called Ghost Club. Now, I just mentioned David Mitchell and Denise Rohan before, who were 2 members of the 3Ds. And after the 3Ds, they put together this band, the Ghost Club, and put this album out. I think it was originally just put out on CD, and this got reissued as this LP in 2002. Licensed from Flying Nun by House Music, and this is out of Germany. Yeah, don't see this around very often. I've played it the once, and it's very grungy and really fucking good. It is really good. I am actually, I should put it on later tonight. Also very pleased to get hold of this. My Bill Doreen collection has been growing rapidly this week. What are we up to? 24 minutes. Oh, that's not too bad. So yeah, Bill Dyrene and The Hat, a recording from 2013 out on Grapefruit Records. Grapefruit is this label where you have a subscription thing and they put out very limited editions of three or 400. This is 178 of 330. Yeah, so this is a recent recording. Actually, I think one of the Kilgore brothers plays on this. Yeah, the Grapefruit covers are pretty generic. That's about it. No writing, no indication. All it just says is Grapefruit on the back and the number. But it is Grapefruit Year 3. And I can't remember what the record number it was. Didn't it say on the label? No. Oh, yeah, there it is. GY3. Something like that. Anyway, so there's several New Zealand records on the Grapefruit mail, on the Grapefruit subscription service, and I have at least, I think, 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, and there are a bunch more. There's some Dead Sea and there's some Roy Montgomery. Actually, I did get the Roy Montgomery box set eventually. I managed to pick that up. So actually that's upside down. But anyway, so but I'm really, this is one of Bill's best albums. It's just on first listen anyway. I mean, it's actually probably one of his more accessible ones, if anything. Nearly there, nearly at the end of the pile, if you're still with me. Earlord. Now, if you remember, I showed back in that unboxing video that there was some 1970s reissues, not issues, so 1970s originals I picked up of New Zealand stuff. Well, here's another one. Earlord Clockwork Revenge. This is kind of quirky, proggy sort of pop, bit of split ends, the early split ends there. I think in the kind of singing and vocals and stuff. Lots of time changes, lots of quite complex music, and I'm really fucking impressed. Actually, I've wanted this for many years. And it wasn't expensive. This is the Australian version. The New Zealand version goes for over $100, but I can pick the Aussie ones up. They're obviously a lot more got sold over there on the Australian label, on Infinity Records. So I picked it up for well under half of what it goes for over here. And damn if it's not damn good. Better than I expected, so that's good. Fits quite well with that Stung record I showed a couple of videos back. That kind of sort of thing. And then finally, and this took me over the record per day quota that I had, but I had to get one because this got released just a matter of a week or so ago, and it disappeared very quickly off the Flying Out website, so I couldn't get it from them. And then there were they played a reunion gig at a big punk reunion gig up in Auckland just last week, and of course it's in Auckland, I'm not anywhere near Auckland, would have loved to have gone. And I understand there's only 200 copies put out. So anyway, I did a bit of searching online and I found that Real Groovy up in Auckland had a copy. There may have been copies in Penny Lane, but Penny Lane don't sell online. And so unless I happened to be in town and catch them if they had any left, or they might have sold out already. So the Tearaways, Short-Haired Rock and Roll from the 1979. This is one of New Zealand's kind of nearly original punk bands, or maybe the second wave of the original punks from the late 70s. Some of these guys are still around today doing music. Chris Orange there, or the blonde fella, I believe he went on to the Features, and the Features did a compilation like this. This has basically their 2 singles plus some live tracks, pretty raw live tracks. So really cool, good. I mean, I was familiar with most of the tracks off some other compilations that I have, like the Rip Shit and Bust compilation, and the what's that other one? Oh, the AK-79 compilation as well. Right, so that's Tearaways, and finally the last one. So to get free postage from Real Groovy, so I don't have to pay an extra $10 on postage, I only had to buy 2 records and get the amount over $50. And for $50, I got 2 fucking good records. Well, actually, a bit more than $50 to be honest. Actually, wasn't it? For $30, I picked up this, and I believe they still have some copies at Real Groovy if you really want to get your hands on one. But this is a fantastic compilation. It's a double LP for $30 in New Zealand. That is unheard of. I put 2 records back into the same side. So this is a 1960s psychedelic New Zealand music compilation, and probably about 2/3 of the bands that I on here I was familiar with. Maybe not necessarily the songs, but certainly the names of the bands, like the Human Instinct, for instance, the La-Di-Dahs, the Gremlins, the High Revving Tongues, the Avengers, Ray Columbus, of course, Ray Wolf in the Avengers, and then 40 Watt Banana, whose record I just showed recently, they've had a compilation of all the stuff they ever recorded from 1971. That's just came out. That's fantastic. And then Timberjack Donahue and his Dali Muhammad, which is absolutely fantastic. So as you can see, there's some notes. This was put out on Real Groovy Records. And I have another Real Groovy record and via Frenzy Music. And Frenzy Music is a kind of New Zealand reissue. So Frenzy did all the original CDs. There were 5 volumes of this series, A Day in My Mind's Mind, that came out on CD, which I had none of, and it would be nice to have them, but apparently they're getting hard to get too. But this was kind of cobbled together from those 5 CDs, and there is 7 tracks on each side, so there's 28 tracks here. And I know some of the bands on here that I kind of was thinking maybe their music overall isn't all that great, but they may have picked out the best tracks that they did, because I'm really, really impressed with this. But yeah, really UK psychedelic sort of style. So, but and great cover there, work there. That I guess is the Human Instinct on the cover, because it is named after their song. A Day in My Mind's Mind is the first track on side 1, and it probably is the best track on the record, and it is fantastic. So that is New Zealand Music Month. So that is a rundown of the rest of the albums that I have purchased in New Zealand on New Zealand Music Month for New Zealand Music Month. That is a hell of a lot of records. That is going to keep me busy for a while. I really need to reel it in a little bit. Yeah, right, sure. You know, there's just so many records coming out all the time, and there's so many good ones. So anyway, that's me, and that's enough of the bleep bloop bloop in the background, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.